Ever notice how you can give perfect advice to other people, but completely ignore it in your own life? You could tell someone exactly what they need to do. Be disciplined, stay consistent, stop making excuses. And it sounds so clear, so obvious, so easy. But the moment is your turn, everything changes. So why does that happen? Why can you see the path so clearly for others, but not walk it yourself? Because when it comes to your own life, there's no authority. There's only negotiation. And every time you negotiate, you give up control. But here's the real question. How many times did you negotiate today without even realizing it? Your alarm went off. You had a plan. Last night you were serious. This is it. I'm waking up early. But then morning came, and suddenly it wasn't a decision anymore. It was a conversation. Just 5 more minutes. You didn't sleep enough. Today doesn't matter. And in that moment, you paused. Not because you didn't know what to do, but because you were negotiating. And the second you start negotiating, you've already lost. Because the version of you arguing for comfort never runs out of reasons. So you go back to sleep, and it feels good for a moment. But what did that moment actually cost you? Because the day just started, and you already proved to yourself, my decisions don't mean anything. Now let me ask you something. How many times has that happened this week? Because it doesn't stop there. It follows you into everything. You sit down to work. You know exactly what needs to be done. But instead, you open your phone, just for a second. And that second turns into 10 minutes, then 30, then an hour. And somewhere in between, you tell yourself, I'll start soon. But what are you really doing in that moment? You're negotiating again and again and again. So what does that turn into over time? It turns into a pattern, and that pattern becomes your identity. But here's what most people don't understand. Your life is not shaped by big decisions. It's shaped by these small negotiations, invisible ones, quiet ones, the ones no one else sees. So what happens when those small negotiations happen every day? You start losing authority over yourself, not all at once, slowly, until one day, nothing you say to yourself feels serious anymore. You say you'll go to the gym, you don't. You say you'll focus, you don't. You say you'll change, you don't. And eventually, your brain stops believing you. So now when you try to improve, there's hesitation, doubt, resistance. And you think it's because you're not disciplined. But that's not the truth. The truth is, you trained yourself to ignore your own commands. So now the real question is, why does your brain keep choosing comfort? Why does it always find a way out? Because your brain isn't designed for growth. It's designed for survival. And survival prefers easy, safe, predictable. So every time you face discomfort, your brain sees it as a threat, and it tries to protect you by giving you an option, an escape, a way out. And that escape feels logical. It feels justified, but it's not. It's just familiar. So now you're stuck in a loop. You want to change, but every time it gets uncomfortable, you go back to what feels easy, and the cycle repeats. But what if the problem isn't your discipline? What if the problem is the fact that you keep giving yourself options? Because think about it. When something is non-negotiable, you do it. If your job required you to be there at 6 a.m., you'd wake up. If missing a deadline had serious consequences, you'd finish the work. So, clearly, you're capable of discipline, but only when there's no negotiation. So what happens when you apply that same standard to yourself? What happens when your own rules become non-negotiable? At first, it feels uncomfortable because you're not used to it. You're used to having an out, a backup plan, an excuse. So when that disappears, it feels like pressure. But that pressure is what creates structure, and structure is what creates control. So what happens when you finally take control? You stop asking yourself, do I feel like it? And start telling yourself, this is what I do. No debate, no delay, no emotional permission, just action. And when that happens, something shifts. You stop relying on motivation. You stop waiting for the right mood. You stop hoping things will feel easier.
and you start moving. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's boring, even when it doesn't feel rewarding. But here's the part most people don't expect. It actually becomes easier. Not because the work changed, but because the resistance disappeared. Because resistance lives in the negotiation, not in the action. Once you act, there's no argument left, only movement. But why does that feel so different? Because you've removed the question, and the question is the problem. Should I do this? Every time you ask that, you invite doubt, you invite emotion, you invite escape. So what happens when that question no longer exists? You act immediately. And that removes something most people don't even realize is exhausting them: decision fatigue. Think about how many times a day you hesitate, overthink, delay. Every one of those moments drains energy. So by the time it's time to do real work, you're already tired. But what if there was no hesitation, no overthinking, no delay? What if your life was built on rules instead of decisions? You wake up because it's time. You work because that's the system. You train because that's the standard. Not because you feel like it, but because it's who you are. And suddenly, everything becomes simpler. Not easier, but clearer, because you've removed the chaos. But here's where it gets deeper, because this isn't just about productivity, it's about identity. Because the moment you stop negotiating, you become someone different. Someone who doesn't need motivation. Someone who doesn't rely on feelings. Someone whose words actually mean something. And that changes everything. Your habits stabilize. Your confidence grows. Your results improve. Not because you became more talented, but because you became more consistent. And consistency comes from one thing: non-negotiable standards. But what happens if you never build that? What happens if you keep negotiating forever? You keep delaying, keep adjusting your standards, keep choosing comfort. And slowly, your life reflects those choices. Not dramatically, but quietly. You stay in the same place, same habits, same results, same frustration. And one day, you realize time passed and nothing changed. Not because you couldn't change, but because you never stopped negotiating. And that's the hardest truth to accept, because it means it was always in your control. So now the question isn't what should you do? You already know. Wake up earlier, work harder, stay consistent. The real question is, will you actually follow through? Because the next moment is coming, soon. Your alarm will ring, your work will call, your goals will demand effort, and your mind will offer you a way out. It will say, later, not today, just this once. And in that moment, you'll have a choice. Not a big one, a small one, but those are the ones that matter, because they repeat every single day. So the real question is, what happens when you stop negotiating? You lose comfort, you lose excuses, you lose the ability to escape. But what do you gain? Control, clarity, momentum, self-respect, and over time, a completely different life.
Because now your actions match your words. And when that happens, you become someone powerful. Not because of what you achieve, but because of how you operate. So now, the final question is simple. The next time your mind tries to negotiate, are you going to listen, or are you finally going to take control?
And if you're being honest, this isn't new to you. You've felt this before. That moment where everything clicks, where you feel clear, focused, serious. You tell yourself, this is it. This time is different. But let's be real. How many times have you said that? And what happened after? A few hours later, you relaxed. A day later, you slipped. A week later, you were back to the same habits, same distractions, same excuses, same version of yourself. So what makes this time any different? Is it the information? No, you already know what to do. Wake up earlier, work when you said you would, stop escaping into easy things. You've known this for a long time. So if knowledge isn't the problem, what is? It's the moment when no one is watching, that quiet moment, when it's just you and a decision. Because that's where your real life is decided. Not here, not while you're watching this, but later. When your alarm rings, when your work gets hard, when your mind starts offering you a way out. That's the moment that defines everything. And most people lose right there, not because they're weak, but because they hesitate, they pause, they think, they negotiate. And in that small gap, they give control back to their emotions. And emotions will always choose comfort. So the real question isn't, did this video motivate you? Because motivation doesn't last. The real question is, what happens when this feeling disappears? Because it will. Life will go back to normal, your environment won't change, your habits will try to pull you back, your brain will try to protect you, and it will sound convincing, it will sound logical, it will feel real. Just today, start tomorrow, you deserve a break. And in that moment, you won't realize it, but you're standing at a fork, two directions, same as always. One is familiar, easy, comfortable, predictable. The other is uncomfortable, silent, repetitive, boring. And that's why most people never take it, because it doesn't feel exciting, it doesn't feel rewarding, it just feels hard. But here's the truth no one tells you. That path, that boring, uncomfortable path, that's the only one that leads anywhere. Everything else just loops. So if you keep choosing what feels good, you'll keep getting the same life. But if you start choosing what's required, your life changes. Slowly at first, then all at once. But it only happens if you stop negotiating. Not once, but every time. And that's the part most people don't understand. This isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily one, a moment-to-moment one. Hundreds of times, every single day. And no one is coming to enforce it for you. No one is going to hold you accountable. No one is going to force you to follow through. It's just you. And that's what makes it hard. But it's also what makes it powerful. Because the moment you stop negotiating, you take full control. Not over your circumstances, but over your actions. And that's enough to change everything. So the next time your mind starts talking, offering you comfort, giving you a way out, pause for a second and recognize it. This is the moment. Not later, not tomorrow, right now. And then ask yourself one thing. Who's in control right now? Is it your emotions or is it you? Because whichever one you choose, that's the direction your life moves. So now there's nothing left to explain. No more strategies, no more tips. Just a decision. And you already know what it is. So be honest. In your last 24 hours, did you act like someone in control or someone who keeps negotiating? Comment it. And the truth is, your life isn't decided in big moments. It's decided in these small, invisible ones, when no one is watching, when no one is judging, when no one is there to push you. Just you and your standards. So if nothing changes after this, nothing will ever change. Not your habits, not your mindset, not your life. Because the only thing that needed to change was your decision. So stop waiting, stop negotiating, stop giving yourself a way out, and start becoming someone who does what they said they would do, no matter what. If this hit you harder than expected, like the video. But more importantly, decide something today that becomes non-negotiable and stick to it. What's one thing you're done negotiating with yourself about? Comment it and don't break it. Subscribe if you're serious about changing how you operate. Because this isn't about motivation anymore. It's about control.